will unmute. And so I'm going to just very quickly, just because I want to see people and I want to hear people, I would love for you to introduce yourselves. Just very quickly, just say something very quickly. And I think in the process, you could just remind them that to sort of mute everything in the background while they're introducing themselves, right?
Okay.
And can you start? Let's start with very quickly, Ortavia, and going down. Leo, you're at the top. Quickly, Leo. You only have a second.
I am Leo Gilling. I am the Jamaica Diaspora Task Force Action Network chairperson, and I'm just here to learn.
Okay, Dwayne?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm Dwayne Dice, and I'm technical support this afternoon.
Debbie Smith? Can you unmute her for me, please? Debbie Smith?
Debbie.
She's muted. She's muted.
Okay, yes, there we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Smith from Mapen Primary, Clarendon, Jamaica. Just like Leo, I'm here to learn.
Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you.
Andre Campbell?
Andre Campbell?
Go ahead, Andre. Andre, go ahead.
They're asking for you to introduce yourself.
Andre Campbell?
Andre has two devices on.
Yeah.
Hello. Andre Campbell.
Pleased to meet you, Andre.
From Mapen Primary School.
Pleased to meet you, Andre. Danielle McLennan.
Huh?
Danielle.
Hi.
No, yeah.
Hi.
Hearing me well?
Danielle, okay. And where are you from? What school are you teaching?
Infant in Trelawney.
Trelawney Infant School. Okay, pleased to meet you.
Same here.
Is this Anasie, Adrian?
Adrian.
Adrian?
Anasis. Hi, Anasis Adrian. Nephew.
Anasis. Nice
Adrian.
to meet you.
Thank you. The
And
last name is nephew, not nephew.
Okay. I think I'll call you Adrian, okay?
No problem.
Adrian. And you
No
call
problem.
me Gretel, all right?
No
All right.
problem.
Wonderful.
For this course, I didn't do it the last time because I got an email saying it is put off, and I didn't get another email after that. So would I be getting a certificate for this course and the next one?
Yes, Adrian, you definitely will. As long as you come back at 5, right? You definitely
problem.
will. Wonderful.
I've registered for both courses.
Yes. All right. Stacey Ann? I like to get to know people's names, so please forgive me for the few minutes that we're going to do this. Stacey Ann?
Go ahead, Stacey.
Hi, Stacey.
She might,
Stacey and Nemhard?
be
Okay. We'll come back to her. Elsada McDonald.
Yes, my name is Elsada McDonald. I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm here to learn.
What school do you work at? Karen Peters?
I'm not in the school system now.
You're not in the school system now? Okay.
No, I'm not.
Wonderful. Okay, Sharon? Dwayne, I'm putting you in quite a spot, aren't I?
Yeah, I'm on mute. Yes.
Go on, yes, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Peters from Beulah All Age in Clarendon.
Pleased to meet you, Sharon.
Nice meeting you too, Gretel.
Monique?
Monique Ford.
Uh-huh.
Supposed to be on.
You mute her?
Yes.
Can she unmute? There you go.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Uh-huh.
My name is Monique Ford, and I teach at Stony Hill Technical High, and I'm excited about learning. I did not do the course the last time.
Okay.
So this is my first time doing it.
Wonderful. Welcome, welcome. Debbie?
Hi, my name is Debbie. Well, I teach at Excelsior Community College.
Uh-huh.
And I look forward to the course today. I didn't do the last one. I don't know of a last one.
Uh-huh.
I'm open to learning.
Welcome, Debbie.
Say hi to Phil Roy for me. Phil Moore, I'm sorry.
Okay, and
he's a good friend.
He's a good friend, I see. And who is asking me to say hi to Phil Moore?
Leo Gilling.
Leo Gilling, okay.
Sashian? Sashian,
But
please.
before you move on, Dr. Greta, Debbie, can you please put your last name there as well?
It's McFarlane. How do I put it there?
Put it first and last. All right. Who's the next person?
Sashian?
Sashian Cox?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I
Hi.
am Sashian Cox.
Nice to meet you.
I'm in Montego Bay. You too. I'm in Montego Bay and I teach at Irwin Primary. I'm very excited about today.
Oh, Irwin.
Irwin.
Yes,
Irwin
Primary.
The Tabakasam shop.
Yeah.
It's next to Sam Sharp, Leo, not Bucka. You make it sound like them Bucka Bush. No, it's next to. It's adjacent to. Hi, Monique, be the next person. Nice to meet you, Monique.
Wait, we did Monique Ford?
Yes, Monique.
He's not on.
Okay, Camille Gordon. Are you able to get Camille?
No. Oh, yeah, she's Camille?
There you go.
This is Camille Gordon from
Okay.
Hastings Primary and Infants.
Pleased to meet you. What's your school?
Hastings Primary and Infants. That's in Trelawney.
Oh, Trelawney. Okay.
Okay. Pleased to meet you. Debbie?
Likewise.
Okay. Debbie? I think Debbie was on before. Yes.
Yeah.
Debbie was
no,
on before, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Debbie needs to put her
Geraldine.
last name.
Okay. Geraldine McKenzie?
Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My first time joining JAMINAR.
JAMINAR.
Yes.
Yes, so I'm just so new to it. I'm eager to see what is going to come out of it.
Welcome.
I'm from Waterford Primary.
From what?
Waterford Primary.
Where's that?
That's in Portmore, St. Catherine.
Oh, okay.
On that end, okay. Paulette Plunkett. Paulette?
One second.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Paulette Plunkett, business education teacher from the Stone Hill Technical High School.
Wonderful. Pleased to meet you. Pleased to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nicole Gordon? Nicole, I thought I saw Nicole Clark. Sorry, Nicole Clark. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Nicole Clark. I currently work at the Craighead Primary School in Manchester.
Nice to meet you. Camille Gordon. Yes, nice to meet you. Camille? Did I say hi? Did I say hi to you before?
Yes, you did. I'm from Hastings. That's
okay. Okay, I did. And if I have missed anyone, right? If I'm Darian, I think Darian Mason. Did I say hi to Darian?
No, you didn't.
No. Hi, Darian.
Darian
Mason.
Gretel,
Yes.
I think the Irwin Primary School is your batchmate, is the principal, and his name is Clive Nelson.
Nelson he's a principal there?
Yeah.
Nice, wonderful. He needs to come on board. Yes. Hi, Session. Hi. Okay then. So this is what we're going to do then. I think we're going to start off. I want to welcome everyone. I'm not going to see everyone at the same time, but what I would like is for, even as people join us, to feel free to make this an interactive session. I'm going to ask Dr. Dwayne to sort of, and Timon as well as Ortavia, help me to identify people who have questions. And as the questions come, I do have my cell phone here. So if a question comes up, you can just sort of send it to the end. You know, hopefully we will be able to work through the questions, or we can ask one of our conveners to help me with the questions. So I'm going to go through the slides, but please, as I go through them, I would like you to make some notes, and then we can always come back to the questions. That way we get through everything. Okay? So today we're going to talk about understanding the anatomy of trauma. We're going to break trauma down to the point where we all sort of have a clear picture of what this thing is. We're hearing the term a lot. We are, as teachers on the front line, you are faced with trauma yourself. You are faced with students who are experiencing trauma. Their parents are experiencing trauma. The community, the society seem to be experiencing it and showing the signs of it at a different level. And I think as we see what is going on, a lot of us are confused as to what this thing is and how do we deal with it. So we are going to start off by defining trauma. We're going to sort of look at what it is. And I want to look specifically at the objectives. I want to look at the impact of trauma on people at the individual level, as well as at the professional level. And I think it's really important for us as teachers to understand that we often are survivors of trauma, as well as victims of trauma. And for us to be able to help those who are, you know, in our charge, we have to understand how we have experienced it, how we are experiencing it, and how we can help each other along. So that's the first objective. The next one is really to understand, and I think I need to move my thing over here. There you go, it's over there. To increase the knowledge of the different types of traumas. We have different types and the signs and symptoms. When we talk about the signs, we're talking about what we see. The symptoms are what the people who are experiencing it will report to you. So we will look at that. Also, to differentiate between the different types of trauma, there are 2 types of trauma, and they both have different short-term as well as long-term impact. And we also want to look at the difference between crisis, the term crisis, as well as the term trauma. Very often we sort of mix the 2 terms up, and I think it's important for us to understand it within the context of the coronavirus, and I think it is so important, right? So we're gonna look at all of that. Now, if you look at this lovely picture in front of you, you see what represents the brain. The one on the right-hand side with all the pieces together, that's what we hope that our brains should look like. But unfortunately, the pieces don't always come together. And so they tend to look like what we see on the left-hand side. It's not that they're kind of like all over the head or anything, you know, it's just that they're not necessarily working together in the way that they ought to work. And this happens in the face of a crisis or in the face of some sort of traumatic event. The pieces just don't seem to fit in as they ought to fit in. So what is a trauma? What is trauma then? And, you know, teachers love to give definitions, right? And I'm going to test all of you. At the end of the class, I'm going to ask someone to tell me what trauma is. And Ortavia, we're going to give them a special certificate if they can tell us, right? All right? Okay. So a trauma is anything that is deeply distressing. It's an event that is deeply distressing, and it places some kind of demand on the physiological system. That's our body. It literally places some sort of what you call it now, demands on us to respond because it's something different. It's out of the norm. And it results in a sense of vulnerability, that sense of, you know, I'm at everybody's or at the beck and call of this event that is occurring in me. So it really has some kind of profound effect. And it also might cause us to have a sense of no control. We don't have any control over it. So a few words, it's distressing, it's disturbing, it is going to impact our physiological system, and it's going to allow us, it's going to cause us to feel vulnerable or cause us to lose control. And it's so basically it's going to overwhelm the whole system. And this, we all want to be in control of our lives. We want to be able to feel as if, you know, we're going about our lives on a day-to-day basis and we have control of it. Trauma takes that away from us. And it also takes away our sense of connection as well as our sense of meaning. Crisis is kind of different. And I want to think of the place where we are now in Jamaica, and I know Leo had asked us to ask Jamaicans what they're dealing with in terms of the virus and everything, right? So we're going to get a chance to talk about this as teachers, what this crisis is having in terms of its impact on you. So the crisis then is a crucial turning point. It's a point where, you know, you are going to have to do something. What is inside of you is going to respond to what is going on outside of you. So how you're thinking about things, how your heart races, how you feel inside, nervous and stuff, as a result of maybe just coming in contact with someone who might have something going on out there. So this has nothing to do with you, right? And you have all kinds of crises. You can have a storm, you can have a tsunami, you can have a fire, you can have, you know, COVID virus, the disease. This is a crisis, is of crisis proportion because it changes our lifestyle, right? And it's can lead to better change, or it can lead to worse change. I think right now when we're thinking of the coronavirus, we're thinking in terms of where is it going to take us? Is it going to make us better? Is it going to make us worse? Some people who are optimistic will say that, you know, it's only going to make things just go and get worse. And some people will say, who knows? You know, when we all come together, it might get better. So they are kind of similar, the term crisis and the term trauma, but there are some differences as well. Okay? Another term that I want you to bear in mind too is stress. How many people, I want you to raise your hand. If you can, if your picture can, I can see you, right? Raise your hand. How many people can say they are stressed? Or they have experienced stress? Stress, right? Quite a few of us have experienced stress. So another term we want to look at as we go through this session is what is stress? That's the third term. It's a stimuli that is capable of eliciting an alarm response. It's a little different, right? Trauma is distressing and it causes some sort of demand. It puts demands on us. That's a trauma. The crisis is a little different. It's a turning point. It can end up good. It can kind of end up bad. But the stress now is the stimuli. That is what can either put us in a state of trauma or can put us in a state of crisis. Okay? So let's try to differentiate between the three of them. All right. These things I want to say are normal, right? When we go through life, we're going to experience stresses, we're going to experience traumas, we're going to experience some sort of crisis at some point. And as a result of that, we're going to have some kind of response. And we call that the aftershocks, okay? And I want to emphasize that these things are normal. And sometimes when you have the aftershocks you have the different reactions, they don't come at the same time. They might come right away. So if someone slaps you real hard, you're going to respond, right? Just like that, you're going to respond. And so that's normal and that's immediate. But sometimes it doesn't show itself up yet. Show it up at the point that it happens. It might come a whole lot later. It can come maybe weeks later. It can come months later and stuff. And as we go through, I will show you why it can be delayed for different people at different times. There can be that numbing effect. It doesn't happen immediately. It comes later on. So remember that it might be delayed. And the reason I say that is I want you to understand that when the person might not show it right away, but when they do show it, we need to be there to understand that this after effect can have serious implications, even though you never saw it before. And of course, it's unique to you. No two persons will experience a traumatic event same way. There are certain things that the body will experience and will show, but no two person is going to process a traumatic event or a crisis in the same exact way. So when we have the stressors, then just think of it, that we can end up having some kind of reaction to trauma. Is there any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, so let's go on to stress. Stress, right? Stress is not always a bad thing. I want you to know this. Stress can be a good thing. So you have two kinds of stress, right? You have eustress and you have distress. So eustress, I like to think of it like you're going to get married or you're going to have a birthday party or something exciting that's going to happen, or you're going to have an exam, a test or something like that, and you have to prepare for it. Now, that kind of stress is manageable for the most part. It's manageable. One, because it motivates you. You know, you want to look pretty for the wedding, or you want to look, you want to pass the exam. So it's going to motivate you, and it is going to now help you to focus your energy on whatever the event is. It's usually short term, and it is usually perceived within our coping abilities. That means we don't feel as if it's going to overwhelm us. This is something we can do. We're motivated to do it. We have the energy to do it. It is not so long, and it can create this sense of excitement because we're looking forward to the end product. And very often that improves your performance. So if you think about the exam, for example, when children are going to do an exam and you put that stress on them, you know, they come to school, they have to learn, they have to bring their books, they have to do all of that. You know, as teachers, you have to prepare. So on a Sunday, I don't know if you do it the same way like me, but when I started back in the 80s there, Leo, from 1980, right? I've been at this thing. And you never do it. Oh, no, don't tell nobody. No, sorry, Leo, sorry. That is back in the day when I did that. It's me, not you, all right? But I remember when I had to write lesson plans, and I had to make, back in the day, they used to say teachers' aids and stuff. And I used to be excited because, you know, a lot of the times I had to come up with objectives, and I had to come up with different ways of teaching and delivering and stuff, and it motivated me. So when I go to school on a Monday now, I am ready now to teach my students, you know, and with all the energy and all the material that I have. So that causes you stress, and it's a good stress. However, this stress is a little different because now you're starting to experience anxiety, and you have some sort of concern, and the anxiety and the concern can get higher and higher and higher as the magnitude of what you have to do gets bigger and bigger. It can be short term, it can be long term, but the difference with distress now is that it is seen as being outside of our coping abilities. It feels unpleasant, and instead of increasing and improving our performance, it will decrease our performance level. And this now is what will lead us to having some sort of mental and physical problems. Okay, so bear this in mind. We all feel some sort of eustress on an ongoing basis, but when it comes to distress, what we feel when we feel this one, it makes us operate at a different level, and it can have short-term as well as long-term impact because we're not coping as well. Trauma goes a little bit deeper, okay? So trauma now, if we were to go back at it, we said it's something that is distressing and it causes change. It changes what is going on in terms of our physiological part. Here's what trauma does. It impacts the survivor's brain, and it causes a kind of wounding. It's like somebody takes something and just tap your brain, right? And it lit the brain. And when it lit the brain, it creates a kind of, how you say it now, an imprint. And it's an imprint that is hard to contend with. It's hard to deal with. So it wounds the person's brain. So as you think about your children who have been traumatized, and you think about yourself, remember that there's a wounding in the brain. There is an impact. There's an imprint that will never go away, okay? So trauma does that. So it doesn't only wound the brain, but it's intrusive. It causes these kinds of alteration in your brain. And you know, if you think about the brain, you have the prefrontal cortex, the frontal cortex of the brain, And that's the part that does the job in terms of logics. That's the part that really helps us to problem solve, that help us to sort of think about thinking, be involved in what we call metacognition. And, you know, it allows us to really to sort of solve the problems, to remember, to use the different kind of procedural knowledge that that we got, and use it in a good way towards or solving problems on a day-to-day basis. But trauma takes that away from us, right? And so even when there is no danger, because of the memory of the wounding, the individual is going to see danger when there is no danger. And one of the things one of the examples that I always use is, if you as a teacher, and I've seen it happen several times, a child does something, right? And you walk towards the child in a not even necessarily a threatening manner, right? And you might have something in your hand or something, and you see the child do something like that, okay? What happens here is the child is seeing a danger that you might not even plan to hit the child or to scold the child or anything, but because the child had some sort of memory of someone looking like you, and I'll talk more about that, someone kind of like looking like you in a threatening way, they're going to respond accordingly. Because what has happened is that the frontal lobe is not working now. The frontal cortex is not working anymore. And in this case now, when the frontal cortex is not working, we have a little, tiny little thing. It looks like a little almond shape. It's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is actually developed. It's more developed. It's one of the most developed parts of the brain at birth. And when the child gets to like the teenage years, and when we get to part 2 at 5 o'clock today, we'll talk a little bit more about that, about the brain part and the development, because that part is the emotional seat, is a seat of your emotions, right? So we call that the emotional seat of the brain. And that's where the happiness and the sadness and all of that occur. So what happens now is we have another part called the hippocampus. So think about it. The frontal cortex, this is a thing called the amygdala back here that is kind of really, really developed, kind of like almost mature at birth. And then you have the hippocampus. The hippocampus is kind of the logical part of the brain. The information comes through and it hits the hippocampus. The hippocampus kind of makes sense of it. And then it sends out the information back again through something called the thalamus. We'll talk a little bit about that, right? But what the amygdala does, that emotional part of the brain does, is it shuts down the frontal cortex. It shuts down the hippocampus. So logics go away. And this is when there is a trauma. And so 70% of your brain oxygen also is going to move to the muscle, because the minute you think trauma, you remember something traumatic, there's a trigger right there. The brain says, hey, I have to make the whole organism survive. And so it sends the oxygen to the rest of the body. It sends it to the muscles. So the muscle is going to either run, it's either going to stop. And so we call it the fight, flight, or freeze act. So here you have the amygdala, danger, danger, danger. The hippocampus can't do anything, it's shut down. And then the brain said, okay, then we're gonna have to send some messages to the other parts of the brain. Send a message to other parts of the body. And here you have the organism deciding, okay, what am I going to do? Why is this important? When a person is re-traumatized, them get up in the morning, mama throw water upon them to get up out of bed. Me know, Leah, that never happened to you, right? Never happened to you. You know, they throw the water on you to get out of the bed, or them lick you, get up out of the bed. Them give you the tea and the tea too hot, and them tell you to hurry up and drink the tea. And then them beat you to get to the bus stop. all of that. So here is this person being traumatized over and over and over again. The person is always in fight, flight, or freeze mode. Okay? And then they come and they sit in front of you. The body is going to remember. It's not going to forget. And it's going to respond because the intellectual brain, that frontal lobe, is not working. The hippocampus, the logical part, is literally not working. So when you think of this, and this is just a pictorial demonstration of some of the things that happen to us when we are traumatized. And I need to go back. Oops, I ended up going way ahead. All right. And I'm actually trying to move this thing over here. Here is a little picture. When we experience trauma, we cannot always be in this fight, flight mode. And I'll come to the general adaptation system in a minute. When we experience trauma all the time, then we are going to feel threatened. But the body has to move from the traumatic state that you see here to a state of equilibrium. In the presence of constant stress, then it's hard for the individual to renegotiate. The person cannot get a chance to decide, one, how do I approach this problem? Do I approach it? Do I run away from it? How do I really look at this problem? Do I try to say to myself, wait a minute, that person who is coming to me is not going to threaten, he's not going to hit me. They're not going to hit me. And so you become more alert and you stop and you think about it and you can return to equilibrium. If the person does not get a chance to return to equilibrium, then they keep on seeing the world as a threatening place. And they're always in that place of trauma where they're going to have the same kind of response. So as human beings, we want to renegotiate. We want to move away from trauma. We want to move to the place of equilibrium. But very often that does not occur for some of us. So we stay always in this place. And you see at the bottom here, where you see fold, it means that sometimes when an individual experiences trauma, they kind of just give in. It's almost as if they experience a sense of, you know, why am I even going to try? Let me just let it happen, just whatever happens, right? And that's when they freeze and so on and go up and down this whole spectrum. So there are two types of trauma. You have type 1, and this is acute trauma. Acute trauma is that kind of trauma that is like, you know, it's so bad. It's really so bad, and it usually happens like once. It's not like all the time that it happens. It might happen just once, but it has like, it's almost like a punch like that, okay? It's just, it's so hard, it's so intense that it can just leave indelible imprints on the individual. Then you have the more complex trauma, and this is type 2. And here, you don't necessarily have to be exposed to the traumatic event, but you hear about it. And this is important for teachers because type 2 is what you might experience when you start hearing the stories of what is happening with the individuals that come into your space. That's indirect exposure. They're telling you, they are narrating their stories, and you're hearing it, and you are now trying to sort of process that. Because you are processing it, you also have the chance of experiencing what is called professional burnout. You have things coming at you all the time, just all kinds of events, all kinds of stressors coming at you. You're hearing other people's story. You're trying to process other people's story. you might be a survivor of trauma as well. And so here you are now trying to do your work, trying to move along with your life. And what happens is that physiologically, psychologically, your body can't deal with it. And so you can experience professional burnout. Vicarious trauma is a little different in the sense that you are watching the person, you're watching it from afar. You're not totally involved in it. And I remember years ago when I used to be a student, one of our teachers, Miss Rod, Alice Rod at Sam Sharp Teachers College, she said to us, there is something called vicarious learning. And do you know what vicarious learning is? And we were sitting there trying to figure out, what is this woman talking about? And she was like, you see somebody else do something and you learn from it. You're never involved in it, but you learn from it. And what does that mean for you? It means that as teachers to be, we must put up all of the aids them in the classroom. Because while we are not focusing on it, right? The kids might not be focusing on it. They are seeing it. Them just walk by and them see it and them say 2 times 2 is 4. All right, A is for apple, C is for cat. And it's not where the teacher is directly telling them, but they are seeing it, but it's kind of like at the periphery, right? Not directly. So vicarious trauma is sort of like that. It's where you're seeing it happening to someone else. You're hearing it happening, but you're not the direct recipient of that trauma. Secondary trauma is kind of like that to what happens. You experience it because you kind of like hear it, see it, and all of that. You feel it like that. Okay. And this is for all our teachers. So Dwayne, I'm going to pause for a minute. Dwayne?
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. Is there any questions? Is there anything that I need to attend to?
No, nobody is raising hand or nobody's talking.
Okay,
so
then.
I don't know if I could unmute them and ask them if anyone has any questions.
Okay, so let me pause for 1 minute and see if anyone wants to ask a question. I'll stop right here just a minute.
And also just a reminder to let participants know that they should put their first and last names on the display and to enable their video.
Okay.
Oh. You can go back.
Okay then. So I've been asked to Dwayne, to put your first and last name in. And also, if it's possible for you to make your videos open so that we can see you as you speak and participate. Okay, so you're about to unmute them. Is there any question?
Okay, one question.
Question? Maybe they could do the, okay, I am unmuted by the host. Okay, is there any questions? Is there anything in the chat that I might need to pay attention to?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole here. Nicole Clark.
Hi, Nicole. How are you?
I am doing all right. It's just a question underneath the acute trauma where, no, that would be the complex trauma, type 2. Yes. This trauma, you said we hear about it and it's indirect and it causes professional burnt out. I am asking, in a case like this, I felt like this many times being professional, in the professional burnt out stage. What do you do right here?
Okay. So for the person who feels that they're just sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? It's good for you, one, to find a support system. That's the first thing. You have to have someone who you can talk to. That's the first thing. And you know, I am a psychologist. As a psychologist, I am always going to be about talking, right? But it's not just talking in the sense of just letting off. And that's a good thing, to be able to let it out. Call that catharsis. Let it out when you're upset or whatever it is. Or you just feel like you don't have the energy to continue to do whatever. You want to talk to someone who would kind of walk you through it. Are there alternatives? What would these alternatives be? Could it be that you need some time off? Would it be that you need to do self-care? And I'll say this, and I know all of you don't vex with me here. Please don't vex with me. But a lot of teachers don't know how to take care of themselves. Okay? And we take care of everybody else, but we don't know how to stop and take care of ourselves. Because like I said, when you are hearing and you are getting the indirect exposure, when you are hearing everything and seeing it in front of you, it is going to take its toll on you. It's going to make you like you don't want to get up and go to work. It's going to make you not want to do the work. And we're going to be real about this, right? We don't want to go to work. We don't want to hear. We don't want to deal with the other stuff and whatever. And if you get to the point where you feel that you can't, then you might need to talk to your principal about taking some time off. And I know that that is hard, right? And I don't know if it is possible. Is it possible, Nicole?
I am aware of taking time off and all the different things that would come with that. However, in our system, it's a little bit different because they're thinking of you considering your teachmate or the other persons who might have your class to deal with while you are away. However, I think many times, how about you being in the classroom, being frustrated, unable to cope and losing it, or you die there? Does it make a difference? Don't they will have to make provision for somebody else to come and take up what you were doing before? So I am just not getting it. I don't understand the system. Sometimes I try my best to understand the system, but I just can't get the system. If you take a day off, it seems as if you take a year.
And within the context of not having enough class, enough teachers and stuff to go around and whatever, it is very, very hard. And a teacher's work is hard. And so it is, how do you take time off, and how do you speak with your principals, your administrators and stuff about really saying, look, I'm just tired. And it's not saying I got tired forever, but it's right now in the interest of giving my student the best. What are the alternatives? What can we think about? And I think we have to move to a place of collaboration, because when we can collaborate with our administrators, when we can sort of like really problem solve together, then burnout does not, impact us as much. And it is true, burnout is a reality. It's a reality. So in light of that not happening, you have to stop and ask yourself, Nicole, what is it that I can do to take care of me, apart from saying I have to take off from work? And sometimes it is very, very simple. I always say sometimes it is so simple we don't know. It's kind of like shutting the world out for a minute, whether it is husband or children or whatever, friends and whatever, and take just a little time for you. And sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes. It's just we just stop every single thing and just do you. And don't feel bad about doing you either. Don't feel bad about it, because a lot of people feel that the term self-care means selfishness. And I think teachers especially need to understand that self-care is really, if I am going to take care of your needs, I have to do me too. And sometimes it might start off with 15 minutes and you have to train them. You have to train Huzzy, and you have to train the children. You have to, your children, and you have to train family members to give you that space in time. And sometimes it's hard for them to get it. But as long as you keep on doing that, then there's also the mental space. Sometimes we just have to stop thinking. Sometimes we just have to breathe, or we have to relax. If it means we're going to have to sit down and read something, or just not read anything or whatever, but just try to get your body back in tune with it, because when you have professional burnout, you make professional mistakes. And sometimes the professional mistakes that we make are out in the open. Sometimes they are so bad, there is no redeeming. And like you say, then what happened? And I am out of it and the world continues. So it's measuring yourself, kind of timing yourself, sort of like sharing with others where you are, and share with people who are problem solvers with you, and then putting that in place, little at a time, a little at a time. Okay? Because it's a reality. It's a reality. Professional burnout is a reality for many of us as educators. You know, one of the things that I did many years ago is I just took months off. I guess I was fortunate, and I just took time off. I just took months off. I said, I cannot do this. And you know the funny thing, Nicole, when I took the time off, and I told my family, right? I said, oh, I want to go and mind me for a while, right? But I'm going to take time off. And I took the time off. And when I went back into the classroom, I was full of energy. I was eager to be with my children again, because I actually missed them and wanted to be with them. So it's like you have to get to the space where you take it, you use it, and then you become rejuvenated and ready again, because you don't want to make professional mistakes that can impact you and the lives of others as well. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so take care of yourself.
Dr. Griffin,
yes.
We have Arteva and Leah.
Yes.
I don't know who wants to go first.
Yes. Ortavia, please go first.
Okay.
Okay, so just want to say something, because I'm reading Michelle Edwards. You know, sometimes I like to think of it like it's not that administration does not care. And the only reason I know is because I work closely with administration, because I'm a grade level lead, and I also lead the intervention. I'm an intervention coordinator at my school. What happens is we have different purposes. And so it's important to collaborate. And sometimes administration does not have to be involved in that collaboration process. A simple thing like the room next to you, there is a teacher. And if you know your body's temperature. So if you kind of know, if you're paying attention to yourself, when your temperature is rising, and you know when you're getting to that space where, you know, this is overwhelming, it's making me angry, I'm thinking about things that are not proactive. I like at that moment to take a breather, knock on the door next door, open that door, because I'm lucky I have a door from the next room right to my room. And I know that's not the case for you. But at that point, myself and that teacher, we've made a pact that when that situation becomes that overwhelming for me, I need to step out, and they're going to be watching both classes. And that could be like a 5 to 10 minute break, but it gives you a chance to reset your brain And another strategy is to remove the student who is creating the stress, the stressor. So I like to put that person in a different room at that time. And that gives me a 5 to 10 minutes break as well to refocus myself, refocus the other students. And that works sometimes. You know, we just have to come up with different proactive strategies that help us inside the classroom too, so we don't get to that point where we actually need the months off, you know, because there are times when you're gonna need that, of course, but it's not an everyday thing. The everyday thing is the self-care that Dr. Bradford is talking about.
Just do the 5 minute, the 10 minute, the 15 minutes break. And that might be something that administrators really want to incorporate, and teachers might want to really ask about. How can we do, just like Ortavia was saying, how do we support each other for a few minutes? How do we step away and not be seen as neglecting or whatever? How do we, you know, help the children to understand that right now teacher needs a break? It's okay. I love you. I'm coming back to you, right? But give right now, how do we step away from it? And it's strange enough, I have found that even as when I was teaching elementary school, primary school, the kids understand it. You know, they get it sometimes, and they are like, oh, she upset, you know. And you will find that some of them might say, behave yourself, boy, behave yourself. This is what you make teacher begs. And sometimes it's just saying, yes, so can I breathe for a minute? Can I have a 2 minutes? And you don't even have to say it to them, but it's giving them that impression. And I don't know if it will work, but we're going to collaborate with them to take them into it. Let them take some of the responsibilities too, because sometimes it's them cause some of the stress on us, right? And also when we hear it, you know, as we hear it, we are feeling it for them. And I think that's what is important for us to remember, that we are feeling their pain and we're feeling our pain. And it's a lot for us to carry on. It's a lot for us, right? Leo, so you can.
Hold on. Yes, he's on.
All right. Thanks very much for that. A lot of teachers are here, but I know that they probably don't want to say to you that on this forum that a big part of their stresses is the administrator themselves.
Yeah.
And not the students, because they love to teach the students and they know that that is their job all the time. But the other things that come with their jobs are the stresses from the principal, who has a different mode of operations, MO. The way that the teacher wants to teach is not necessarily the way the principal wants the teacher to teach, and vice versa. And they probably have different types of expectations, and they probably, you know, principal may be a hands-on type of person who want to know every nook and cranny of the teacher's work, while the teacher is kind of loose, and those kind of things get mixed up. And so the burnout with the students, I believe, would probably come only because the students are there and they're doing their work, but then we have administrators really creating hardship, and bundle them together, make it one big problem for them. So taking it apart is kind of hard because it's a bundle.
Yeah, and it is true, like you said, sometimes the administrators are the source of the stress, but back in terms of the burnout and all of that, another thing that I want to say is that there are some things that are outside of ourselves. Sometimes we can't leave the school, because the bottom line is we still need to make bread, we still need to pay our bills and do all of that. And moving, you know, we might want to move from one school to the other because we can't deal with it. And so what we have to do then is to develop strategies. We have to look at strategies that kind of that are kind of like for you, right? How do I deal with this? What is outside of me? If I have an administrator that is not understanding, who is not dealing, is not working with me, what can I do that is going to not make me even more stressed and more pressed? What can I do? And then the reality is, so I have administrators over here, so I have the students over here. And so I am going to have to try to balance that. And that's really, really hard. So what you have to say is, can I help this child? Let me help this child. Can I help that one? No, I can't help them. Can I change my administrator and the way them do things? Maybe no. What can I do? Maybe eventually I have to leave. But while I am here, how do I create a space, a mental space that will not let them intrude to the point where I become burnt out? And that can be a challenge, and it has to come with a lot of practice and a lot of balancing of where you are. Okay, all right. So I'm going to move on very quickly because now we are kind of like at 4:30, 4:35, and I want to look at sort of like just kind of work-related trauma exposure. And there are different things that can happen as a result of the trauma that we experience. So when we hear the vicarious trauma, when we are exposed to trauma vicariously, sometimes it will change our world of our point of view. And how can it change our point of view? You hear something and you might have had a certain perception about it. And you say, I never thought about this. So say, for example, you hear about a child being molested or a child being beaten or something like that. And all along you're going on and you're saying, no, sir, that could have never happened there, sir. That could have happened at all, right? But it changes your point of view when it is up in your face. It can change your point of view. And when it changes your point of view, you are going to have to respond to whatever it is that you hear, whatever it is that you see. And there are different types of responses, right? You can have a kind of negative response to it, where you become traumatized as well, right? You become traumatized by whatever it is that you're hearing and that you're seeing. And you can develop, you will see at the bottom of my screen, you can develop something that's called compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is very simple. All it means is that you hear it so much time, it just makes you tired because you cannot do anything about it. You can't do anything. And so you're just tired. You come in, and I know, Octavia, you work in a community where there is a lot of violence, there's a lot of crime, there is a lot of problems in that area, right? And how do you go there as a teacher every single day, knowing that the children are being hurt, they come, they're hungry, they're all kinds of stuff are happening to them. How do you deal with that? And teachers have to deal with that. What do we ignore? What do we pay attention to? Because you see, if we pull it all on ourselves, we don't know how to self-care and we don't know how to balance it and put it in place, we are going to experience compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue leads to burnout. Then you might have someone who kind of is more neutral. They're kind of like right in the middle, and they say, look, I can hear it, I can see it, and I can feel for you, but I am not going to take it on necessarily. I'm not going to take it on and make it mine. That's not me. That's not my problem. And it's not that you're being, you're lacking compassion. It's just that you're saying, you know something, I can fix this, I can't fix that. And I think as we go into our next segment, we'll talk about how can we fix it as teachers? What are some of the things we can do? At least some of the strategies. And there is a positive way of dealing with it. you can develop a kind of resilience to it. We call it vicarious resilience, or you can transform. You can transform your perception as well as the lives of others. And then you now become satisfied. So you experience what is called compassion satisfaction. You're not necessarily, pleased with everything, but you've done what you can do. And so there is a kind of peace that you will experience, okay? So this is one of our little toolkits that we use. If you experience some of these things that you see on the screen, or most of them, you are in the process of experiencing compassion fatigue. If you don't feel like you have any purpose, if you are anxious, just going to school makes you anxious. You're not sleeping at night. You're kind of listening all the time to hear what people are saying or what they're doing. If you feel like there's nothing you can do, there's that pervasive kind of helplessness. If you have changes in your appetite, you're not paying attention to how you take care of yourself. And as a therapist, I will tell you this. My students will tell you, all I talk about all the time is self-care. Because I tell them all the time, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of nobody else. And that's the reality. That is the reality. You can't take care of you, then it means that you are going to be given less of you when there is less of you. And you're not able to concentrate. So you sit down and you're trying to write the lesson plans and you're trying to make sure that everything is in place, but you can't concentrate. You forget things. You get angry easily. You find yourself on that emotional roller coaster. You're kind of up and down and you just feel totally overwhelmed. If you are experiencing any of these, like I said, then you are experiencing compassion fatigue. And this is something that you might want to really deal with. So count them, see which ones apply to you. And the more that you find are applying to you, then the more you're going to have to pay attention to taking care of yourself. How you know then you're going to be subject to it? These are some signs that you can have. They're kind of similar to what I had before, but there are additional pieces as well. You will find that you're exhausted all the time. You get up in the morning, you're tired. The middle of the day, you're tired. At night, you're tired. You have this, you sort of have these, the need to kind of have a drink at the end of the day, and maybe even in the middle of the day too, all right? You might find that you have a need to use drugs or so on. You dread going to work. You really dread going to work with them. You don't enjoy your career anymore. So you started out all eager and everything, and then you just don't like nothing. You don't like nothing about the school. You don't like to see the books. You don't like to see anything about that. These are some of the things. And you might also find that, you see, the way you used to see the world, you don't see the world like that anymore. So you have just, you become more dissociated from the world, because when you think about it, whenever the body goes into distress, it's either going to fight, it's either going to run away, or it's going to freeze. And sometimes we freeze mentally, right? We just shut down. We can't deal with it anymore. We might even find it's very hard for us to get close to people. And when I talk about intimacy, I'm talking about just getting close to people, being able to, your friends and stuff that you used to talk to and you used to be close to, you tend to want to avoid them as well. And you find that there are more absenteeism on your part. You don't want to go to school, so you know then that you're definitely in danger. So, is there anybody who is brave enough to tell me at least an experience of some traumatic event that you have been called upon to provide assistance with or to deal with? And did you feel that you had the know-how, the competence to deal with it? And so, Dwayne, I'm going to ask you again, if there's anyone who wants to share, we'll take two persons. Two persons.
I'm going to unmute everyone, and then we will hear what you have to say. Who would like to go first? Anyone?
Has anyone ever had some sort of traumatic event that you were called upon as a school teacher? As a school teacher, somebody came to you and told you about a traumatic event that they had, and you think you were ready to deal with it?
You could raise your hand also.
Everybody was a bad idea.
Oh, is someone speaking? I'll talk. On Friday, I had a student. I had a parent conference with his parent the day before. And then Friday, he explained to me that he basically.
Okay, can you?
And actually came after him, but Mom and stepped in.
Artavia.
Yes?
Dwayne, can you mute everybody?
Can you hear me?
Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second, please.
Okay, great.
Okay, all right. So on Friday, I had a situation where I have a student. I suspect that, you know, he acts very girly and his parents are from Mexico. And culturally, most Mexicans do not want to hear that their boys are gay. So Dad and I had a conversation prior to Friday, and his response let me know that he suspected that his son is gay. So this is a 4th grader, right? So he's still growing. Anyways, Mom and I had a conference and she was very docile, and I noticed all the signs of someone who possibly is involved in domestic violence. And I offered support and she accepted it. And so I wrote up a referral for her and the child. And then on Friday, student came to class and he had bruises, of course, so I had to ask, due diligence, because I'm mandated reporter. And so I asked enough questions to get clarification. He insisted that he fell, but I knew those were not from a fall. So I called CPS, Child Protective Services, and did my due diligence. Later that afternoon, Mom came and sought help. So the same office that I sent her to. And she said that Dad went after the son because he was acting a little girly. And so he went after him and she stepped in the middle. And so she got most of the blows. But regardless, the kid had a lot of blows. And the whole day, I knew something was wrong because he was super emotional. I knew I couldn't do more than I can. And I know my heart goes out to the family, but I can't overstep my boundaries because I do have experience dealing with situations like this, because I have them a lot. But, you know, I have to choose my response. So initially my response is to become that mother to the child. But then when I realize I'm doing that, I pull myself back and I get back in a professional role and I make the reports as I should and I let it go. I tell myself that I have to let it go, and I do let it go because I know if I don't, I'm taking it home to my family and I'm going to start stressing myself out, and I know the process, so I let it go and I told myself I did all I could.
And I think that is key, that when you are faced with it, it's I always say, I forgive me as a as a therapist, I do this. I say to my students all the time, and I think the same thing applies to teachers. When your students come to you with their issues, at the end of the day, sometimes you feel as if someone take a bat and just beat you. And you are so exhausted that, you know, it starts with a principal, then it starts with that ripping in the corner, and then it starts with this one and that one. And it's just, and you are constantly in this mode of fixing, right? And that's why it goes back to do what you can. And once you know that you have done what is legal, what is right, then you now are able to say, okay, I can't take that on. I'm not going to take that on because, one, I am not competent to do that. I don't have the training, for example, to deal with something. People from Child Protective Services, whatever, and that's a whole new story in and of itself. But then as educators, we have to make the judgment too. Is it something that needs to be dealt with? And do I have the capacity to deal with it? Because if we don't have the capacity to deal with it, we have to let it go and let those who are capable of dealing with it, deal with the issue, right? So is there any other question? I got onto this chat thing and then all of a sudden I was looking at some of the chat things as well. Thank you, Ortavia. I think you did the right thing. I really believe that as educators, we need to let go of certain things, yes, and let other people do the work. Okay. Okay, anybody else wants to share something that is pressing that I can help you with?
Let me unmute again. Anyone else? Anyone would like to share?
Anybody else? They can also type in the responses, type in the questions, and then I could come back to that, okay?
Right.
Okay, then in the chat room, they can, in the chat area, they can also do that. Okay.
My video on.
Whose is it?
No, she was just making a comment.
Okay then, all right then. So if you check the chat and there's any questions there, I can respond to that too. So as we move into working with children who experience trauma and how it manifests, I think many of you might have heard of
Everything is under control.
Have you muted them now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay then, wonderful. Okay, this diagram that you all see is something that is known as the adverse childhood experience, right? And what we have found, an experiment was done years ago. A study was done many years ago. And I want to say it in two contexts. One, in terms of the teacher and in terms of children. We all experience things that are not necessarily good for us. But research has shown that when a person is exposed to undue stress, when they are exposed to trauma on an ongoing basis, then it's going to impact various parts of their health, right? And what I tend to focus on is the neurological development. And I think this is important. Teachers, a lot of children who are sitting in front of you because they have had something really terrible happen to them, or something bad happen to them. I won't even say terrible, but something bad happening to them. What happens is their whole central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, the whole body is going to have some sort of disruption. When that happens, then we are going to find that the children will have social, emotional, and cognitive problems. And sometimes they sit in front of us, and some teachers, I'm sure, will say, most of them sitting in front of you right now have some sort of social, emotional, or cognitive problem, and maybe all of them as well. The thing though is that once the nervous system is damaged and all these things happen, they are more at risk in terms of their health. They will maybe start using drugs. They might start doing things that can harm them, not just drugs alone, but they will take a whole lot of risk that will put them in danger. They end up with several diseases. As they get older, they end up now with things like different types of diseases, different types of disabilities, as well as social problems. They start getting in trouble with the law, for example, because they're not thinking straight, they're not thinking right, they're not able to process things right. Then they're going to start now being a problem to society, and very often it leads to early death. And it would be great if you as teachers were to sort of just Google adverse childhood experiences and its impact on the lifespan, because it really impacts our children as they go along. So when the children come to us, what do we see? What do we see? And I am going to quickly go through this. Usually they are victims of abuse, survivors of abuse, neglect, and they also experience a lot of household dysfunction. So when you think about abuse, it does not just have to be the physical abuse. There is physical abuse and there is emotional abuse. That kind of abuse where the child just feels like, you know, they're always crying, they're always sad because someone says something bad, somebody just kind of like, you know, they don't care, and all of that. So they experience emotional abuse. They might have people that nobody take care of them. They don't make sure that they eat right, they bathe properly, that they are nurtured, they get enough sleep and all of that. So, and then you have those who are emotionally neglected. Their feelings. Children are filled with all kinds of emotions, right? That they're trying out with. And sometimes they are neglected. They are not hugged. They're not kissed. They're not, you know, they're not told that they are of any value. And then they have to deal with things like mommy and daddy mentally ill. They might have to deal with parents who are in prison, in and out of prison. And then they might have to deal with all the big people things, like, you know, the parents fighting and having arguments, and they're moving from one place. They're with daddy today, they're with grandma tomorrow, with auntie and all of that. And so there's a lot of household strife. So these are some of the things that you're going to see sitting in front of you on a day-to-day basis, all right? And sometimes the child might not experience all of them, but there are children in your class that are sitting in front of you who are experiencing all of these. So when we talk about your kind of trauma, know that your children are just as traumatized as they come and sit in front of you. And so when they come, they have a whole bunch of emotional responses. And as they come, they're wound up so tightly. Right? They're trying to deal with the emotions that they are experiencing. So they have a plethora of emotions to deal with. And believe it or not, a lot of them is confusing to them. They don't know why they're feeling it. They don't know why they're angry. They don't know why they're confused, why they're anxious. They don't understand the pain that they're experiencing, the bitterness, the rage. And it changes for different children. And so remember how I said when that amygdala, that emotional part of the brain, is literally hijacked the hippocampus. And so the kids come to you with all of these emotions, and you have to deal with it, and they have to deal with it. And sometimes the rage that they direct at each other and stuff, the anger, sometimes they panic. And you are there sitting trying to figure out, all you see is a child who looks like he's very angry. Or you see a child who won't go outside and play on the play field. Right? And you might have one who just, you know, they don't trust anybody. They look up and they don't trust anybody, and they sit in the corner and they're not dealing with anyone at all, right? And that child who is always just out to hurt others as well. They just do things like that boy where we just stab the other child for no apparent reason. Why? Because these are the results of some sort of traumatic event that the child might have had to experience. And these are the implicated parts of the brain. I will just quickly go through them. You have the cerebellum, the hippocampus, that little thing I was talking about, the amygdala right there, the temporal lobe and all of that, all of them. They are all implicated, because whenever any kind of danger comes through, any kind of message, it's gonna come through the thalamus right here. And when it comes here, the thalamus kind of act like a relay station, and then it sends the information to this part of the brain. Now, if this part of the brain sees it as something it can't deal with, it's going to send it along through the nervous system. And as it sends it through the nervous system, all these different parts of the brain, they stop working together. They're not working so well, all right? So everything becomes a little confused. Another part that I want you to bear in mind, another thing is that the left side of the brain is that part of the brain. So when you have the kids in front of you, you want them to be logical. You want them to think in terms of sequence. I can think of like the grade 6 teachers and those teachers who are presented or preparing children for exam. You want the left side of the brain to take over and to work. You want them to be analytical and objective and see the problems and work through the problems. And the left side of the brain is capable of that. But the right side of the brain is also just as good. It makes the child creative. It makes the child deal with the emotions and kind of like intuit as well. But then trauma, just take the two part. Normally the two of them work together, you know. In the middle, there's something called the Corpus Callosum. And what it does is it connects the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. But when there's trauma, it just separates it. So the left side is trying to keep up with the right side of the brain and telling the right side, say, not so bad, man. What you're seeing is not so bad. But the left side of the brain not paying it in mind at all. Right? So you are seeing a child sitting in front of you who is experiencing that. I'm going to quickly go through this. I'm not going to stay there. It just talks about our stress response system. And the reason I leave this here is just because when a child experiences constant stress, the body does not get a chance to return to normal. So when the child sees something that stresses, it's going to mobilize the resources. That 70% that I was talking about earlier. It's going to mobilize the muscles and the rest of the body. And so, but know that the body can't deal with stress for long. That's why when you're in a stressful situation and you come out of it, you just want to just whoop like that. You're literally tired. But the body goes through this resistant phase and then it just exhausted. So sometimes when you see the children tired and they can't seem to focus, it's because they have gone through this so many times, they don't know how to deal with it. These are the consequences of stress. We talked about that. Children will experience things like nightmare. They won't be able to sleep. They might find that they hate themselves. They don't have high self-esteem. They don't trust the world. They have panic attacks. They have flashbacks to what happened. And so when they sit in front of you, just imagine that these are some of the things that might be happening to them. And in fact, I want to say that for those of you who have experienced trauma, that these are some of the things that you will also see happening with you.
Dr. Bradford.
Yes.
There are some comments in the chat that I think maybe you could address one of them. In Jamaica, the comments are from a few people talking about the stress that kids are going through in Jamaica.
Yes.
And it's coming from parents. Parents stress as they're taking on parent stress.
Yes.
And one person, Marissa Daly Crawford, she asked, how do you think a 3-year-old child can be affected by having a dad who hallucinates? And what would you, how could you help in getting help for that child? Should he or she go visit the dad still if he's hallucinating?
Well, first of all, I would like to know what the hallucination is. Is it that when a person is hallucinating, are they seeing things? Are they hearing things? Because you have the auditory as well as the visual, right?
Okay.
And so you want to know, what is it? Is the dad seeing something? Because if the dad is seeing things, then his behavior is going to be dependent on that. If he's hearing voices as well, then he might, he can respond to the voices in negative ways. The child, if for example, one of the parents or one of the guardians really admits that the person is having hallucinations and they feel that the child might be in danger, then the parent, and I don't think the teachers, I don't know about Jamaica, but I think the parents might have a responsibility to keep the child safe. And I don't know what safe might mean. Could it be the child to a grandma or something like that?
Okay, this is what she's saying. She said that the daddy feels like the world is against him. Everybody's spreading rumors about him or wants to kill him.
Or wants to kill him. So that's delusions of persecution, where he feels the world is out to get him. Is there any truth in it? And it could be that he has magnified it, that it's not everybody that's out to get him, but maybe everybody in his sphere that is actually, he thinks is out to get him. And are there behaviors that would indicate that? Right? So that would be something that you would want to see. Is there any truth in what he's saying? And if there is no truth, because you see, a disorder can be what a person experienced, and those are the symptoms, but then there might be signs as well. The signs would be what other people around them see. And if other people around are seeing the same thing, then maybe some steps might need to be taken, definitely, to protect that child. I would say definitely.
Okay.
But
There's
there has
another
to be a
one.
match. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I hope, so Marissa, if you have other things to add to that, you can type it in. There's another one. Artavia mentioned yes to the person, but if you could elaborate on it. He said, a child coming to school hungry, is that considered traumatic experience? And if so, what do you do about it?
If the child is coming to you hungry, and that's one of the things that's important, you want to make sure always that the child's physical needs are being met, because that would be neglect. That is neglect. And remember how I said there are different things that we do. We can physically abuse a child, we can abuse a child, we can neglect the child. And yes, if the child is being neglected, and that needs to be addressed. Whether it's emotional neglect or physical neglect, that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
And I would say then maybe that you would want to talk with the teacher And then you have to kind of create a wraparound for the child, whatever that looks like. I don't know what it looks like in Jamaica, but I think the principals would be important in this. And, you know, maybe other people in the community or whatever, but someone would have to take responsibility for that. Yeah.
Okay.
That is neglect.
Okay. Now, Marissa Daly said that the father, the previous one, he's angry and speaks back in the open. I think maybe he's talking to himself as if he's arguing with someone. There is no truth to the persecution. The major problem is that the mother doesn't want the child to grow up without a father. She's going to have to make some serious decisions about that child.
Yes. She has to make some. If the father is having, it sounds like he is not only hallucinating, right? But he is also delusional. And that might be signs of some sort of psychosis, some sort of, and I can't diagnose him, but there might be some sign of psychosis right there that needs to be addressed. Some people can have affective disorders, schizophrenia, and all of that, and still be pretty harmless. But you never know until the person is tested and diagnosed and treated. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. There's another one. We're kind of having quite a few coming from the chat room. If a child is unsettled in class, stares, refuses to write, tear up paper, bite pencils, and so on, is the child suffering from trauma?
It could be. That sounds like a good sign of how old is the child also. If the child is school age, there might be those, and those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about going forward. I'm going to have to take a few minutes break, but when we go into part 2, that might be a sign that the child has experienced trauma. Yes.
They said the child is 6 years old.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
There is a strong possibility. And it would be good to find out what kind of trauma the child has experienced. And if the child is being re-traumatized every day or, you know, on a regular basis.
Okay. Let's see if we can put this one in before we take the short break. What would you suggest for, and this is from Nicole Clark, what would you suggest for a teacher and student who experience a traumatic accident?
Okay. So in cases like that, it's important for one, the people who are around the person to give them the space. All right. And when I say space, I mean, one, allow, the first thing that happens when you experience an accident, a traumatic accident, is you're going to be numb. Okay, so the body is literally protecting itself by being numb. Okay, and then the person might get confused, and the person's going to move through different stages. And the first one is numb. This didn't happen. I'm not even feeling it. I don't understand it. You know, why did it happen? But just before it happened, so and so. And they might even find themselves sort of like going back a little bit and sort of like, but why this happened? I remember so and so, and I remember this, and they reminisce a bit and all of that. And even that in itself is it's on a continuum. Okay, so the person can be numb for a long time. They can say, you know, I don't even feel sad, or there's just this, I can't put the feeling to it and all of that. So a lot of things can happen to the person in that stage. And in that case, people around them can just be present for them. And just maybe just provide for their basic needs and whatever. They are going to come out of it. And when they come out of it, you have to allow them to talk about it. Create a space where they can talk about it. or someone can listen to them, someone who is not going to say the wrong things. Because very often in the case of or hearing about traumatic events, we tend to go into talk, and it's not a good thing. You have to be there to listen to the person and allow them to come out in their own space and their own time, and then maybe link them with other sources, support systems that can allow them to walk through the process. The support system doesn't necessarily have to be a professional initially. It can be a church member, it could be someone in the community, but just being there. You know, with children, what is good is for them to write or to draw, to use art or something. And usually therapists can tell you what's going on with them, you know, just by the work that they do and the words that they use. Definitely just being there for them initially is the first step, and then directing them to someone who is a grief and loss therapist, because they're going to go through a whole bunch of emotions, anger, they're going to bargain, they're going to say, Lord, it never happened, and maybe if me did do that, that would have happened. And then they're going to be angry, and then they're going to accept it, but it doesn't happen in a linear way. It happens almost like in a cyclical way. And so as they're going to move back and forth through it, and they just need the support as they go through it.
Dr. Bradford.
Yes.
You spoke about the wraparound process, and I just heard you say some of it, and I think that's where the sense of hopelessness for teachers, I don't know where my starting point is coming out in just looking at the chat. Can you just expand a little bit before you take a break? Like, what should be the first step if you notice that this is happening, and who might you report to and who might you seek help from?
Okay, so initially when you notice that the child experience came out of the trauma, you just have to be there for the child. That's the first thing. And being there means the teachers being there, kind of observing them. When they want to talk, allow them to talk. If they don't want to talk, don't let them talk. For smaller children, you might find that they might start acting out, or they might withdraw. They might need their quiet space, okay? So if you have to keep an extra eye out for that child. And so if they need the quiet space, you give them the quiet space. If it's just giving that extra attention. If there is a school counselor or there is a social worker that's associated with the school, then they might need also to be there for the child. And I know that in Jamaica, they don't have a lot of counselors there in the schools, but in that event, you might need to have them with the vice principals and the principals, just giving that child a little bit more space. And then now venturing out to see where there is any kind of professional help, because you want to know exactly where in the whole grief and loss stages that child is. And so you might need to have some sort of professional help there. But in the meantime, if the child is acting differently, you have to make a lot of accommodations and be flexible for the child as the child goes through it. Because if you're there just quiet and just there for the child, you know, eventually the child is going to reach out, you know. And when they act up, for example, you want to, before you start putting words to it, you allow them to experience it in a safe place, maybe away from the rest of the classroom. You can elicit the help of the other students who are there, you know, and just use words that are like, you know, she's feeling sad right now, or she's mad right now, but she has a lot of things going on in our life right now, and we feel it for you, and we're here for you. And then should the child just know that you're there. And if everybody can wrap the child around that like that, usually children have this amazing ability to bounce back, but they need to have the support. They definitely need the support of all the people around them, adults and stuff.
Dr. Bradford, I think we need to think about like finding a process and then maybe having a PD on that one. Like what is process, a good system, huh?
Oh yes, I can do that. We can work on how to work with kids who experience grief and loss. And it's a very interesting process for them, but it's going to also tax the teachers as well, because each child is going to respond in a different way to the process. But there are steps to work with children who are experiencing grief and loss. Definitely.
Yeah.
So we can develop one for that. Okay, any other questions? All right. So, so we're kind of okay right now. We have been at this for almost 2 hours, guys. But I do want to say though, let me quickly go through the slides, and let me see. You know, this is something, Ortavia, and for, was it Charissa who asked a question? Someone asked a question. These are some of the things we want to consider when we're helping the children who have experienced trauma. Were they exposed to it before? How long? How severe was it? And always know that the significant people in their lives, like parents, their teachers, and all of that, will impact the way that they deal with the trauma. Okay? So it's very important. And I always want to say that because it is so unique, trauma is so unique to the individuals who are involved, we have to make sure that we accommodate them, that we are flexible. When they shift from mood to mood and from one state of being to the other, that we are there to support them through the whole process. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so these are some of the things that I was talking about, you know, but we will skip these. Teachers, professional burnout, it's real. It's real. It makes you exhausted. It makes you kind of like get away from everything. It makes you not able to take care of yourself and accomplish the things that you want to accomplish personally. But then these are ways that we can support each other. Make sure that we look at the perspective, be aware, always try to recalibrate, be supportive, be kind, be loving, understand that it's all about choice. Make sure that you give what you need to receive, listen, empathize, empower each other, right? Always sort of like give people the surprises that they want. Well, good surprises really, but for people who have been traumatized, don't give them, make their world predictable. Make their world predictable, because the survivors don't like unpredictability, okay? Give them space and allow them to heal as best they can. Okay? And if there are several slides, and I can always send them to you, Ortavia, I think I can send them to you, or Kimon, and you can always maybe post them so that they can get them as well.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. I hope that you have learned something from this. And if there are questions, please don't hesitate to ask them. Send them to Ortavia, and then we can always develop additional PDs for them. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Bye.
All right, everyone. Yes.
Goodbye,
Please
everyone.
remember. Thank you, Dr. Bradford. Please remember that you're going to get a survey right after this. You fill out the survey in order to get your certificate of completion. And also, please remember to put your first and last name on the screen. Okay? All right. Thank you, Dr. Bradford.
Quick
Yes,
question
go ahead.
for you, Dwayne and Ortavia.
Yeah.
When do we start? Do we start in about half an hour or? And this one is on child development and how trauma manifests itself based on trauma, based on their age group.
Okay.
We're going to do from 6 to 12, and then we're going to do from 13 up to 21.
You don't have to log out. Somebody
Okay.
do you log out. You don't have to. You can take a break and leave your screen on.
Okay.
We should be starting in 37 minutes according to my clock.
Okay then.
Yeah.
So I don't have to log off.
No.
No.
Just take your video off and take a break and mute, and then get
Okay.
when you're
Okay.
ready. Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording.
Yeah. Stop recording.